What's up, guys? We are back with another Super 7 Ultimates Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles review, taking a look at, well, yet another good guy, because they're all good guys when it comes to this particular way, but we're taking a look at the big one today, quite literally. We're taking a look at Muckman and Joe Eyeball. So it's a 2-pack, sort of like a 1.5 pack, I guess, because he's a little buddy, but he's not quite as little anymore. Of course, we get the slipcover treatment, you know, like we get for every Ultimates figure. So you've got sort of the green good guy slime motif with the manhole cover, with Muckman's visage embossed on there, with little Joe eyeballs on the front, and then of course the Turtles logo on the back. But, you know, you pop that guy off and then you've got your figure there in the big window. You've got the green brick motif with all the graffiti and the nastiness, the muck, so to speak, all over it. And then the back of the package, in typical fashion, gives us our nameplate as well as our bio for these two nasty guys. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Ultimates, Muckman, and of course, Joe Eyeball. It wouldn't be complete without him. This is definitely the one that I've been looking forward to the most in this wave, personally, just because he's humongous. So just like Rocksteady, just like Bebop that we've gotten so far, this thing is absolutely massive. It's a very big figure, covered in detail. It's one of those super, super gross early Turtles figures that, you know, of course, stuck with me as a kid. And I know he's a favorite for a lot of people. So I'm really excited about this one because, I mean, this is the one to like just sort of sit back and ooh and ah all over when you get him out of the box, because he's pretty insane. So let's see what he can do, see how he moves around. We'll come back to this little guy here in a bit because, of course, there's more to his story. But Muckman is interesting. So he is definitely limited in some ways, just like we've seen with some of the other bigger figures, but he's not too bad. He is surprisingly more articulated in some areas than I expected. So as far as his head goes, he is on a big old ball peg here. So he looks up. He doesn't look down too much, but the up is really nice. You do have, you know, tilt side to side because he's one of those, you know, figures that lurches forward. So just like Bebop does, the same kind of thing where his neck is permanently sort of crooked forward. So you can rotate, but it also does that sort of weird thing where it's sort of askew. So you've got to worry about that. But he does have really good tilt, specifically up and then side to side. So that works really nicely. Arms are asymmetrical, and as a result, they do articulate differently. So the left arm, your right, really only goes out about this far. And it's because of this sleeve and then the fact that there is a rubber overlay and there is sculpt on the sleeve. So the sleeves are not the same, and as a result, things just don't move the same. So they goes out that far and then it rotates. The elbow is where I'm really kind of disappointed because it's really limited. It doesn't even get 90. It barely moves. It's just about this. So that's kind of a disappointment. But he does have a really, really good movement at this wrist because, of course, he has no meat there. So it goes up and down really well. And then, of course, you can rotate it all over the place. So that works really nicely. The other arm, his right, your left, goes out further, closer to normal. But he still has stuff that gets in the way. This sleeve slopes up, and then there's a fly on his arm that would have stopped it anyway. So it goes all the way around. He has your normal single joint, so 90 degrees, rotating elbow, and then you've got your rotation, and you've got your hinge there at the wrist. Now, as far as the torso goes, well, he's got a hole. It's got a big old hole right there. You can see it. So he's not going to have anything at the diaphragm. He just has a waist twist. So similar to what we've seen with some of the other figures. I'm hopeful, you know, kind of like what we saw with the Casey Jones figure, that they'll try to implement something more along the lines of a ball peg waist going forward, because he would have worked really well. He's got the lip of the pants that would cover that gap, and you could have the ball there to allow him to tilt forward and backward, because right now he just swivels. So that is a limitation for sure. Legs go out pretty far. Pretty much all the way. If you can get all of his body parts out of the way, you can do the sewer splits if you need to. I'm not sure. Well, no, you're not going to do it with that manhole cover down there. But he does move really, really well as far as the hips go. Outward, pretty far, pretty much all the way. Backwards a little bit. You do have your thigh twist there at that ball. We've got our single jointed rotating knee. And despite the fact that this one's kind of crazy, it still goes basically the same distance as this one.
so you don't have to worry about that being different. They've got rotation at the ankle, so there's a joint actually right at the end of this ooze that's coming down here, and then right at the end of this trash can, so it swivels there, which is probably not all that needed because the knee rotates, but it's not any less helpful. And then you've got hinge, which is really good on this crazy manhole foot. Backwards not so much, but forwards really nicely. And then you still have rocker, which works really well too. This foot being, you know, of course different, also has your hinge. Still not much on the back kick though. And then you've got your rocker there. So he does move, he moves pretty well. He is very much what I expected though. For a figure that was this big, I kind of expected, yeah, he's going to be along the same lines as Bebop and Rocksteady, where they are fairly mobile, but they definitely have their limitations. But he is still really fun to pose and play around with because, I mean, frankly, he's a big rotting pile of walking garbage. So I'm not too upset about him not being the most dynamic figure in the line. I will say, though, again, I really think we are going to see something at the point where this joint is going to be changed a little bit just to give us more mobility and get something moving around this this waist here, because he would have benefited greatly from having at least some kind of ball peg down there. And I'd wager that you guessed right, and we're about to discuss my favorite part of this figure. And I can't imagine that I'm going to be alone in this. The way this guy looks is just, I mean, you know, perfect. I'd throw up like a chef's kiss gif on the screen if I really thought it needed it. But this thing is tremendous. He looks absolutely amazing. And again, this is one of those early, really gross Turtles figures that really kind of exemplified all of the weirdness that we were going to get with this line going forward. The kind of over-the-top sculpt with all the gross-out features, with all the weird thematic elements to bring... I mean, he's a pile of garbage, bringing a pile of garbage to life and then making a figure out of it. So there's a lot going on with this guy, and it's essentially just that figure, you know, upscaled again, but all of those little details are painted here. So all of that stuff that you maybe wouldn't necessarily see when you're looking at the vintage Playmates, because it's all mostly unpainted, is coming to life here. So things like, you know, this like centipede or whatever it is on him, the flower, the fact that he has a fully exposed bone coming out of his arm, all the mushrooms on the side of his arm, the soda can, the flies, all this like ooze and pustules. You've got, you know, a soda bottle, a fish skeleton back here, a spider, an apple core. You got more mushrooms, more bugs, more bones, a trash can for a foot down here, and then you've got the pile of ooze that just sort of explodes out of this knee, which I really like. It's one of my favorite elements of Muckman because of the fact that it sort of makes his foot a manhole cover. So you've got the manhole cover with pizza on it, with a bone, with a worm, with another apple core, another soda can, or a soda bottle rather, this time around. It's just so much on this guy that had to be sculpted and had to be painted to make it, well, I guess an Ultimates figure, because if it's not painted, it's not going to really show up very well. And on top of that, all of the green does have more paint. So he's cast in a green plastic, but then he's also got a lot of highlighted elements as far as, you know, slime and ooze and, well, muck, I guess, like here and here and here and all over his body. But then you've got kind of a light dry brushing of that same color to bring out some of the details, like especially on this hand. You know, you can sort of see it like rotting through, and then of course there's dark and lighter green there to highlight some of those elements. He does have one of the key features of the vintage Muckman, so he's got the hole through his chest, and it does go to the back. So of course, he does have the trash can, we'll talk about that here in a bit, and he does have the trash can for Joe Eyeball to sit in. The trash can has a hole, so the hole goes in here, and there's also a hole here on the backside, so you can see straight through him. It does have the capability in many ways to try to emulate the slime functionality of the first, you know, that Playmates figure. It doesn't come with slime. I kind of wish it did just to try it out. I've got some, so we might try it out and ruin my tabletop again. But it does have the functionality of it. It has all the stuff there that you really need. It might need more slime this time around than the vintage figure because he is so big. But I do like the fact that they kept all that. So the hole in the trash can that leads to the hole in the back, which also goes down into this cavity. I didn't mention that. So I'm not sure if it's easy to see. But yeah, you can see that hole peeking up through there. So this hole goes down and then this hole goes in and out, which I do think is really fun. because of course that was one of the key aspects of this figure. But I can't overstate how awesome this guy looks in hand. He's humongous. We'll just have some comparisons, of course. I weighed him. He's 1 1/4 pounds, so there's a lot of plastic here. I just had to know, but he looks fantastic. All the little bits and bobs and doodads and little nonsensical things that are shoved into his gooey core, like the teddy bear, the flower, all the bugs, like the veins that are kind of popping through, the frog that's on him. He's disgusting and gross and everything that I really wanted him to be, outside of the fact that of course he is slightly limited when it comes to articulation. Once you get him in hand and kind of play around with him and look at him, it's probably not going to matter so much anymore. And then we do have this just wild head sculpt up here, which looks tremendous. It's exactly what it needs to be a recreation of that Playmates figure. So you've got all those like sort of, tentacles basically that make up his lips and then his chin. So it's like supposed to be his mustache and a beard as far as, what is those tentacles making up. And then you've got the clothespin for his nose. And all like the pustules and the nastiness, more bugs crawling on his face, and then the bug out eyes, one that of course is bigger than the other, so it gives it that nice asymmetrical look. And then you've got this curious banana on the top of the head, which of course they kept it. So it's got the hole, and that hole goes down to the mouth. So the mouth is hollow, and it does lead down out there. So if you put some slime in there, it's going to come out his mouth. So I'm really happy about that. So he does have all of the stuff that you need to really recreate this man of muck. And I should also mention one more thing, is that he does have his name tag fully painted, so his NY Sanitation name tag with his little picture there, and it does have his Garson Grunge name fully painted on there. So I was really happy to see that, just to get that little bit out there. So I'm really happy. I mean, you can probably tell I'm very happy with this guy. He looks tremendous. A ton of detail just all over this thing. I mean, there is no figure in this line at this point, I think, that is more detailed than this guy. He's got so much from head to toe, fully painted. It is a beautiful, disgusting figure. Now, before we move on, we have to talk about the other figure in this box. So this is like a 2-pack, but it's sort of like a 1.5 pack, really, because Joe Eyeball was one of those pack-in buddies that a lot of Turtles figures ended up getting. He was a unpainted little slug figure that would go in the trash can that fits on Muckman's back. But of course he's a lot bigger here because he has to be scaled up. So you can see he comes up to, like the crotch on the figure here, which works really well. He's still got that very limey green color. There's not a ton of paint on this guy. It's pretty much just where he needs it, all over the eyeballs and then the mouth and the teeth, of course. And then his sort of underbelly is painted a more bright green color as well. He does have some articulation, so you've got swivels at the actual arms, not his tendrils, and then the head is on a ball peg of some kind, and it can tilt up and down a little bit. You've got a little tilt side to side. It's also useful for rotation, but he doesn't do a whole lot. He's really just meant to sit in the backpack, but he does look fantastic. I think he looks great. The only thing I would have really liked is if they somehow would have made the eyes up top be able to move. I'd love to see them like swivel at these tentacles that kind of lift up there. But otherwise, I do think he looks really nice. It's very much a nostalgic thing for me to see this guy kind of brought into a larger format with more paint, well, with any paint on it, and then with a little bit of articulation. It makes this guy a lot cooler, because I always, and I will always say this, Turtles figures that came with the buddies were always the best, because they just added that extra little bonus. You got 2 figures in one pack, so it was even more exciting because of that. You were already getting a cool Turtles figure, but it came with something extra too, so I always did like those. So I'm really happy to see this guy. He's got a ton of detail on him, a little bit of paint, not tons, but it's really about the size and then the fact that he is somewhat articulated as well. And then for comparisons, we're going to start with other Muckmen from this era. So of course the original era of Turtles, so we've got our Super 7 here on the left, we've got our NECA Toon, and then we've got our vintage Playmates figure here. So you can see, these two obviously line up very, very well. There is a humongous size difference, and then there's a big difference when it comes to deco and everything, but that's the goal here. It's this guy upscaled into something much bigger, and then we've got our Toon counterpart, which really, this is one of those instances where it wasn't too different. They weren't too far apart from figure to cartoon. They're very less detailed. Like, there's not as much gunk floating around inside alongside the cartoon Muckman, but they're still very similar. The idea is very much the same on these two figures, and I'm pretty happy with this one. He's a really solid figure as far as the toon line goes, and this is a great reinterpretation of the Playmates. And then of course you can see just how big he is by comparison. This is among the bigger cartoon figures from the NECA side, and then of course he's absolutely dwarfed by this. I mean, there's a good inch in terms of height, and then overall bulk is a lot different too. So we've got a really good cross section here of the various type of Muckmen that you can get when it comes to that original era of Turtles. Now, as far as size comparisons go, this is definitely where we have to start. So we have to start within the Super 7 line, but we've got to start with Bebop and Rocksteady because these are the barometers for just how big a figure is when it comes to this line. We've all been pretty surprised when we got this guy out of package because he was the first really big figure, and Rocksteady was more of the same. But Muckman here is a little bit different. He is the same height as both of them, but it's a little bit of a different story because he's more hunched over than both of them, and he's bulkier up top than both of them. He's also bulkier than Rocksteady down below, and he's probably a little bulkier than Bebop too. That sounded weird, but he is bulkier everywhere, not to mention the fact that we've got Joe Eyeball sitting on the back of him with the trash can, so it makes him even deeper, and then it makes him taller because Joe adds like 1.5 inches on top. So there is a tremendous amount of plastic here. Like I said, I weighed him. He was 1.25 pounds. He's a heavy figure, and it's very much emphasized when it comes to showcasing his height compared to the other two big figures in the line. So let's move these aside, and we'll do a turtle, because we got to do a turtle. So here he is next to Donatello, and I mean Donatello is absolutely dwarfed by comparison. And then we'll do Shredder, just to give you a human like baseline kind of figure. So there he is next to Shredder. So he's absolutely massive. I mean, I would guess that this is the biggest figure so far in terms of volume, maybe. Just overall plastic, and then how big front to back, side to side, up and down, all which ways. He's a very, very big figure. So, of course, let's do some other lines just to give you an idea of what he looks like compared to other stuff. So here he is with a figure I got done with recently. Here he is with the Figuarts Cooler from Dragon Ball Z, and you can see that he is, well, he's pretty small comparatively, right? Here he is with a normal size Marvel Legends. So here he is with the High Evolutionary, and he looks minuscule by comparison. We'll throw a Mythic Legions in, for a different 7-inch barometer here. And then let's do Slithe from Thundercats, because of course he's the big boy over in that line. So here's our reptilian, and of course, he's also very, very dwarfed by comparison. So there is a lot of size here. I really can't stress that enough. He's a huge figure. If you've got Bebop and Rocksteady, you have a pretty good approximation of how much shelf space you're going to need for him, but he also needs more because he's deeper. So there's a lot going on here. You get a lot of figure out of this release. Now let's talk accessories for this guy. I've already kind of touched on one because technically this guy is an accessory. He is a huge part of his accessory budget too, I'm sure. So this is a big factor into what I'm assuming is why he has a low quantity of accessories. The vintage figure also didn't really have a whole lot in terms of quantity. He had a lot of stuff in terms of mass and plastic, but he didn't have a lot of stuff in terms of actual quantity. So we do get Joe Eyeball, but we of course get the trash can that goes on his back. So, I've already kind of shown the hole that's back here, but just again, it's a big gaping hole. And this is part of the reason why I think it'll take a lot of goop to force it out of there, because the vintage figure just had a really small series of holes on the back. So you've got to pop this big boy in there, and then you've got it. And it's all painted up, so the vintage figure, of course, doesn't have any paint when it comes to the trash can. It's just gray. And you've got like the soda can, the fish bones, you've got a piece of pizza there, because that makes sense, right? And then tons and tons of slime and ooze coming down it. So it looks great. I'm really happy with that. Joe fits in there pretty nicely. He's kind of snug in there, but you can kind of get him posed if you move his arms out a little bit, and you can get him to kind of sit up better, which I think looks really good, to have him kind of peeking out better. And then he comes with just a few hands. So we get these hands on him in the box. So this is a trigger finger hand here, and this is a gripping hand here. So we get a couple of extras. So you get this is sort of just like a mutating slime hand. Like, it's really sludgy and bulky. It's not meant to really do anything. It's not meant to hold anything anyway. So it's got like a worm coming out of it, and then there's all this like muck, for lack of a better word, right? There's all kinds of muck inside this hand. This one is my favorite one though. So it's got him like outstretching his like really bony hands here, and then there's all that slime kind of peeling apart from his fingers, which I thought was really cool. So you've got gripping hands, and then you've got kind of gesturing hands. I wish he came with fists. This is another instance where I kind of wish a figure came with fists. But ultimately, I'm probably not all that upset about it because I do really like these and just what they kind of signify for the figure. And then lastly, he does include his gun. So this is the gun that's like made out of cans and stuff and like trash. So it's got like a soda can, and there is a turtle soup can and a peas and worms can on it. And it has some paint. It's not overly painted, so it's basically gray like the original one is. It's not hollow like the original one is though. And then it has some slime and like worms and bugs crawling all over it, and all that stuff is painted. And all of the rivets and the metal parts that would be holding all of this together, those are painted metallic silver as well. It's really big too. It's like as big as Joe Eyeball is. So it's a really big gun. It's a lot of plastic as far as this particular weapon goes, but I think it looks good. It's very close to what the vintage one is. Here it is for comparison. So it's very close. Ketchup bottle for the sight on it, and then the various cans for the actual construction of the gun itself. So I think this is really cool. This is definitely his signature accessory outside of what's on his back. So he doesn't come with a lot of stuff. I mean, he's got two hands, the Joe Eyeball apparatus, and the gun. So it's not a huge number, but it's a lot in terms of plastic and overall quality. So there's a lot of cool stuff here. The only thing I think we're truly missing is some fists. And then we have to talk about slime. So this guy, again, does not include slime, so there's none in the box, but if you have some, you can try to make it work, because he still has all the stuff, all the holes that make it functionally possible. I've not tried it, so we're going to try it now. I've got some slime. This is the stuff that came with NECA's Muckman. It's pretty good. I mean, this is my second barrel of it, because the first one actually liquefied when I got it out for testing purposes now. I'm not really sure why. It's not that old, but I've got another one here. So you take the little cap off, and then we can just sort of try to load him up. I'm concerned that it's really not going to do this very well, because of the fact it's not like they really intended for it, but it's there. So let's just see what it does. You got to get it in there, and then you have to get enough in so that not only will it sit in the head, but that it will also be maybe able to be forced out when you put his banana skull cap back on. So you can see it's starting to pop out through the mouth there. There's some now. So yes, it does work. I think that's pretty awesome. Like, I love this kind of stuff. I made plenty of messes with this as a kid, so I'm not going to go through the process of trying to get it through the trash can. That's going to take a lot. Like, that will take a lot of slime, because the whole point of it was to get it in there, and then Joe Eyeball would push it down. But the hole here is really, really big in comparison to how the vintage toy was. So it's going to take a lot of slime volume, I suppose. But it does work in the head, and I think that's probably where a lot of folks really care about. So, put some in the center and just have it drip out. You'll probably get the same effect. So it does work. I'm very excited about that. I really wish that they would have included some in here. I know it's a $55 collector toy, but at the same time, this is awesome. So find yourself some slime, some good slime. You usually get some good stuff at like Dollar Tree or Dollar Store if you can't find any or don't have any, because not everybody has slime on hand, but it does work, and it looks pretty awesome, pretty ridiculous. So undoubtedly, this is the figure of the wave for me. Like, there's really nothing negative for me to say about this guy. He does have some hangups when it comes to articulation in a few places, and I wish he came with fists. That's about it. They're legit gripes, but they're not really bothering me once I actually get this guy in hand and play around with him. He is the poster child for what Turtles toys were. He's obscenely gross, covered in the nastiest detail. He was a slime feature toy. He came with a pack-in buddy. Like, there's a lot with Muckman that is Turtles to me, and I think this is the one that really shows exactly what those toys look like when they're scaled up and fully painted, because those things had such crazy levels of detail, and Super7 has done a fantastic job of recreating it all. He doesn't come with slime, but you can use it, and it works. He comes with Joe Eyeball. He's got that huge trash can on his back. He's got those really cool gesturing hands. There's a lot to
enjoy about this figure. And then, of course, you've got the fact that he is like a murder weapon in your hand because he's so big and heavy. There is so much figure here, and I think everybody's going to really love this guy. I'll be surprised if a lot of folks don't count this one as their favorite of the wave because he has just ticked all the boxes for me. So that's going to do it for this look at the Super 7 Ultimates Muckman. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.